It is Friday morning, April 3rd, 2025. I'm excited that I made it to Friday. It's been a long week. We had the annual surveyor conference this last weekend, so my brain's pretty full, been pretty intense. So I'm looking forward to a little bit of a break this weekend. Gonna have to do some brain dumps on some of the things I learned at the conference for sure. This morning I wanted to do a brain dump for this would be for Nikki and Cosette and even somebody like James or Matthew. So some of the folks that we would call CAD technicians or survey technicians, primarily CAD technicians. What I want to title this brain dump is how you can become more than just a CAD technician. Some people might call that a drafter, because I think it's really important for your career, and it's important as technology changes the economy. One of the things that Brian and I talk about is people that work for us need to know how to do more than just draw points and lines in CAD. That's at some point that's going to become a base level skill, a skill you need just to get in the door, like the ability to do basic math and have a driver's license. So it's not necessarily going to be a skill that brings a ton of value because computers are going to do a lot of it, but you're still going to have to know it. Maybe we need to do another truck brain dump about that paradox. That is something of a paradox. So what I want to talk about in the brain dump this morning is when I say a CAD technician, what am I talking about? How to be more than just a CAD technician. What am I talking about when I say more? And then I'm going to give you 4 specific ways that you can work to be more than just a CAD drafter if that's your current role. And we'll talk a little bit about some differences between RH and other places and how you might handle those differences if you're listening to this and you're not one of my team members. As a quick side note here before we get started, I'll let you know that I think this applies engineering, in other engineering, design, and construction professions. So this isn't just for land surveyors. It can be for architects or civil engineers or structural engineers or construction managers, landscape architects. The principles we're going to talk about here are pretty broad. So it's not just for land surveyors, although I'm going to target this at land surveyors. So the title of the brain dump is How to Be More Than Just a CAD Drafter or CAD Technician. So when I say CAD technician, what am I talking about? When I talk about a CAD technician, I'm talking about somebody whose primary job is to create drawings in CAD. And at a typical survey company, you could be doing that kind of as an intermediate step, calculating points for construction layout or creating line work for resolved parcel boundary. So you might be doing that in CAD as an intermediate step, or you might be doing what we call finished drafting at my shop, which is where you're actually going in to create client deliverable. Some folks call them work products, but I don't like to do that. I like to call them their client deliverable, what I like to call it. So it's an exhibit or a map or a report. And that's your primary role. So you're not doing project management. You're not collecting data in the field. Usually, like your main job is to draw stuff in CAD. That's what I consider to be a CAD technician. One of the reasons I wanted to do the brain dump is because my partner Brian and I have been talking about the changes that the economy's going through and this realization we have that moving forward, we're probably not going to employ people who are only CAD technicians because a lot of that is going to get automated. So we need people that can fly UAV and run QGIS and manage projects, review a title report, analyze land description, understand land use regulations, know a thing or two about CEQA. In other words, if you want to keep a job at our company, you're going to have to learn to be more than just a CAD tech. And what I want to talk a little bit about in the brain dump is that doesn't mean that you got to go get a master's degree. In fact, I would encourage you not to do that, most people, because I think that education is overpriced. You have to start expanding your skill set. You don't want to be the person at your organization that only knows how to draw points and lines in CAD, because at some point that is going to be a problem, I think, at a lot of organizations and certainly in mine. We're going to talk about 4 simple ways that you can start to be more than just a CAD drafter. That doesn't take a huge amount of effort, costs a huge amount of money. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the brain dump. That's what a CAD drafter is. It's a CAD technician, someone that primarily works in CAD drawings. That's the main thing they do in their job, either preparing intermediate drawings or client deliverables. So when I say you want to be more than just a CAD drafter, what am I talking about? And I touched on it. Okay, but you want to be more than somebody that just draws points and lines. Be like, I hand you a sketch or you get a set of survey points and you go draw whatever I hand you. Okay, that's a CAD technician. Now, there's part of what I'm talking about. I'm not telling you in this brain dump to go be a project manager or field surveyor. I think it's good to cross train like that, but the 4 things I'm going to teach you, I hope, in today's brain dump are just going to help you be a rock star CAD technician or to start to be what we call at RH an assistant surveyor. In other words, somebody that does more than just draw points and lines. Like drawing points and lines is a really critical part of what they do, but with just a little more effort, you can really leverage or multiply your ability to draw. In other words, you can take your ability to draw and you can make it 2 or 3 times as valuable with some other closely related skill sets that have nothing to do with being a field surveyor or a project manager. And so I think that's really powerful. So I want to teach you how to be like not just a CAD drafter, but like CAD drafter, rock star, CAD technician, rock star, CAD Tech Plus, right? Because that is a person that I am going to really value as a business owner and a leader, and that your boss is also going to. It's going to set you apart from other CAD technicians that just kind of put their headphones on and zone out and draw points and lines. All right. So we talked about what is a CAD drafter. Then we talked about what do I mean by more? How do you become CAD technician, rock star? Now at the last section here, I want to talk about the 4 things that you can do to be more than just a CAD drafter, to be the type of person that I'm talking. Okay, so here's the first one. Make an effort to understand the bigger picture on every drafting assignment that you get. So if you're handed something and you're told, draft this, I want you to ask some questions. I want you to ask yourself, why am I being asked to draw this? What is it for? Who needs it? Who's going to review or check it? Because a CAD drawing is almost always reviewed or checked by somebody. So who's going to check it? What are they trying to accomplish? And ultimately, what is our client trying to accomplish? And look, even if you work for a government agency or nonprofit, you have a client. Right? Your client might be the taxpayer. You still have a client. What is the client trying to accomplish, or what is my organization trying to accomplish? Like, how does this tie into our purpose or mission, short term and long term? Okay. So let me give you an example. We do a lot of monument preservation at RH, so I'm going to probably use that for most of my examples. You get a set of points, and I give you a set of points, and I tell you, go draft this corner record or go draft this monument preservation record survey. A regular CAD technician is just going to go do that. They're going to follow instructions. Here's what a CAD tech rock star does. They go and they review the permit drawings, the engineering drawings, so they understand what's being built and what the construction footprint is. And they go and they review the record maps that have the monuments that we found. And they go look at the photos in the field photo folder so they can understand what the guys saw when they were out doing the field survey. Now, let's just say that takes you an hour. Okay, my company, that is an hour well spent. I am never going to complain about that. Because what that allows you to do, see, is catch problems and make improvements that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do because you understand the bigger picture. And does that take a little bit of effort? Yes, it takes a little bit of effort. Now, you may work at an organization where they don't allow you the time to do that, or they don't allow you the access to the information you need. That's a shame, but I understand some places are like that. I still, even if you work at a place like that, I want you to get in the habit of asking those questions, even if it's just in your own mind. Because then when you get to an organization that does allow you the time and the access, you're already going to have built that habit. And look, this is the truth. If you're working at RH, you have no excuse. You have access to the scope. You have access to all the research. You have access to all the field data. We don't keep any of that locked up. There's no reason for any of my CAD technicians not to understand the bigger picture of what they're working on. And they can always ask questions. I had a situation come up where I was doing a peer review and I was a little bit irritated that we had missed some stuff. And the answer that I got from the CAD techs that were working on that was, we didn't really understand what this survey was for. And my response to that was, why don't you understand? You didn't tell us. Okay, that's not a good answer. At my shop, that's not a good answer. You can't depend on Landon Blake for that. I have got too much going on, and you have the ability to find that information for yourself, and you've been trained to do it. So don't make that excuse. Don't use that as an excuse. Make an effort to understand the bigger picture. That's important. That's the first way you can be a CAD technician rock star. Second way, take a structured approach to processing review comments. Now, these could be review comments from a peer, could be review comments from your boss, it could be review comments from a public agency, it could be review comments from your client. I want you to get in the habit of doing a structured review of those comments. It means you systematically process review comments the same way. There's a system, systematically. And I need to do a better job of training my people on this. But here's the system I would recommend. You take the review comments. We usually call them red lines. Take the review comments. You get 2, maybe 3 highlighters, different colors. Let's say blue, orange, and green. Okay. In blue, you highlight all the review comments that represent something that you made a mistake on, that was silly or stupid, and that was on a checklist, and you just weren't paying attention. Put that in one color. Put that in blue. And then in orange, put all of the things, the review comments that you don't understand, that you need further input on. And there's almost always some of those because review comments can be cryptic. And then in green, put all the stuff that you missed that you think needs to go on some kind of checklist or workflow. In other words, you're like, man, I missed this. I could miss this again on a different client deliverable. I need to put this on a checklist. Okay, so now you've got a document with 3 colors. Here's what I want you. You take everything that's in blue, that's stuff that you missed that was already on a checklist or a workflow somewhere, and you ask yourself, why did I miss this stuff? Was I watching Netflix while I drafted? Was I talking to my boyfriend? I don't know, whatever the reason is. What I want you to do is ask yourself, what percentage of the review comments are in blue? And that doesn't have to be an exact science. Give it a number, 25% or 40%. And then what I want you to do is I want you to track that number over time in a spreadsheet or in a notepad somewhere or in Excel. How are you doing? Are you bringing that number down? In other words, are you getting more accurate and more consistent in your drafting? Can you bring down the amount of stuff in blue? Like the goal is to have nothing in blue. Because stuff in blue is stuff that you just missed because you weren't paying attention or you were careless. And then I want you to take all the stuff that's in orange, that's stuff that you don't understand, review comments that you don't understand. I want you to format that into a list of questions and get that to whoever did the peer review. Or if it's a peer review from a public agency, get it to your boss. Get the answers to those questions. Save the questions and the answers. Type the answers under each question. Type the answer. Save that. Keep a folder. You would be amazed how valuable that will be to you over time as you build up that database. And the cool part is like now you can load all those notes into note files into a tool like Google LM, and you can summarize it and ask it questions. Think about what a huge advantage that's going to give you over your coworker sitting 2 desks down that just takes the red lines, makes the changes, and throws them in the trash can and never thinks about it. That's going to give you a huge advantage. Okay, we still have one more to go, and that is all the stuff in green. That's all the stuff that all the review comments that you received that you think, man, I could eliminate these review comments in the future if I have a better checklist or a better workflow. And there's 2 different things you can do with that information. If you work at a company like RH, you can give that feedback to one of the principals or to the project manager or to the CAD management aspect team, and we will immediately take steps to incorporate that into our checklists and workflows. So not only are you helping yourself get better, but you're helping the team get better. See, remember we talked earlier about leverage? If that's leverage, like you're not just making yourself better, you're making the other 10 people in the company better. The other 10 people that do CAD work. Now, maybe you work at a company, and this isn't uncommon, where they don't have checklists or workflows. Or if they do have checklists, they aren't going to listen to you because you're just a little peon CAD tech and you don't know what you're talking about. That's sad. I'm sorry. But even if you're stuck in that kind of place, you take the stuff in green that you highlighted in green and you make your own checklist and workflow just for you personally. You got a coworker you like, and maybe you share it with them. The single coworker in that other department that you got a crush on, you really like it, share your checklist with that person, right? Be a little bit of an undercover rebel. In other words, you don't have to get it indoctrinated into the overall company set of guidelines. If it's impossible to do that, you can use it to improve your own work and then take those checklists and workflows with you to your next job. Right? By the way, if you marry your crush, if you do this, if you share your CAD tips, tricks, and checklists with your work crush and you guys end up getting married, you have to name the baby after me. Just saying. All right. That was the second way. Third way. The third way is to become a problem solver and a troubleshooter. In other words, if you're having an issue, if you're having a problem as a CAD tech, so maybe something's not plotting correctly, plotting's always a problem. Something's not plotting correctly, or there's an issue with the block, or there's something going on with your text wipeouts. Troubleshoot that problem if you're given the ability to do that. Don't immediately go to your boss and ask him to fix it. What that does is it teaches you stuff. It teaches you about how plotting works in CAD. It teaches you about pin tables and about page setups and about plot computer settings and about print drivers. It teaches you about block attributes and block editing in place and layer management with blocks. Troubleshooting teaches you an immense amount. One of the things I've had to really work on as a boss is not to immediately fix problems for my people, because I realized I cut short their learning opportunity there. There's a learning loop there that I cut short when I just immediately fixed the problem. So become a troubleshooter, learn to overcome problems. If you get good at that, you're going to become a resource for your coworkers. And they're going to be like, oh, hey, go ask Shirley over in the utility department. She'll know how to fix that XREF problem or that plotting problem. Right? That's a great reputation to have. That means you're a person that's adding value to the team beyond your paycheck, which is a beautiful thing, because ultimately that results in a bigger paycheck, right? Or it should. So learn to troubleshoot. I encourage you to use deep learning tools like Google Gemini or Claude as a resource that can help you do that. YouTube, get on YouTube. Before you ask your boss, you better have asked Google Gemini and looked on YouTube for the answer. Okay, so that's the third way. Become a problem solver and a troubleshooter. Last thing, and this is probably the hardest one. Level up your knowledge so you can see the context. Okay, we talked a little bit about just knowing a little bit about the context of the assignment, the project, and the client, what they're trying to do. What I'm talking about here in this last way, number 4, is leveling up your knowledge of the profession, of the domain of, if you're a CAD tech for a surveying company, leveling up your knowledge of surveying. If you're a CAD tech for a landscape architecture company, like leveling up your knowledge of landscape architecture. And I'll give you an example that came up. We had working on a boundary survey, and I was reviewing the notes, and in one or more of the notes, we refer to the deed for the Forest Service parcel. That was one of our joiners. And I sat my CAD techs down and I said, okay, you got a problem here. Most of the time, almost always, there is no deed for the Forest Service parcel, because in California, we didn't get that land, and the Forest Service didn't get the land in a deed. The federal government didn't. We took that land from the Mexican government at the end of a gun barrel. There is no deed. Now, it could be that the Forest Service acquires a private parcel and it becomes part of the Forest Service. Then there will be a deed, but 99.9% of the forest land owned by the U.S. Forest Service in America by area has no deed. So my CAD techs were like, oh, we didn't know that. I was like, yes, I know you didn't know that, but you've been working for me for 2 years or more, and it's time for you to start to know this stuff. You need to understand when a parcel might not have a deed. And there's several different reasons about why a parcel might not have a deed. And it has to do with the way land is acquired and sold and taxed. So you got to know a little something about the U.S. real property system. Start to learn that as a CAD tech. And you could go to Google Gemini and say, Google Gemini, explain to me why most land owned by the U.S. Forest Service doesn't have a deed. And Gemini will tell you. You don't need your boss to teach you that anymore. You can ask those questions. That's how you start moving up, see? That's how you become a survey technician or an assistant surveyor, not just a CAD tech. See, CAD tech just draws points and lines. A land surveyor understands something about the U.S. real property system and knows how the design of the U.S. real property system impacts the notes they put on a boundary survey. level up your knowledge of the domain that you work in. Again, that's broader. That's not understanding the job or the client. That's important, but that's much more narrow. This is just understanding the domain that you operate in as a professional and increasing your knowledge and understanding of that domain, because that will help you be a better CAD technician. Now, most of what we talked about today is fairly easy. It's not rocket science, but it does involve a little bit of effort. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's not super complicated. It does involve a little effort. Don't be lazy. If you can consistently work on doing the 4 things I talked about in this brain dump, you are going to be the last CAD tech at your organization to get laid off or lose a job. And you are going to be the first CAD tech to get a promotion. It's important. Don't be lazy. Put in some effort. Help yourself. Don't just be the type of CAD tech that gets handed a sketch or a set of points and produces a deliverable without thinking, because I can get a computer to do that now. Like, we have that in Carlson Survey. It's called Field to Finish. You've got to bring something else to the table. You have got to bring a level of understanding and knowledge that a computer does not have, or I will just pay the computer to do it. So think about that. I want to talk some more. We'll try and talk some more. We'll do some more brain dumps about structured processing of review comments, maybe with some examples, and we can talk some more about how you can start maintaining those knowledge bases we talked a little bit about as a career technician, how you develop your own checklists. I need to talk some more about all that. So thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it.